So basically the other one is Seedphrase and private key compromise. The biggest mitigation against that is essentially using a hardware wallet. So for some quick context, a hot wallet is basically connected to the internet through your computer or phone. This means the key or wallet credentials are basically stored online in some form or in your browser. I'm not sure how it works exactly for MetaMask. It might just be like encrypted in your browser somehow, but there's basically an umpteen amount of ways to have your credentials stripped via the internet for hot wallets, which is why cold wallets are so important. So cold wallets are basically hardware devices where the key is generated purely offline and physically beside you. Seeing how a ledger's, roughly $120, like in my opinion, if you have like $1,000 or more in crypto, you should probably buy and set up a ledger and at least start to, it's really just the initial friction for setting it up that's hard because, and people think like way more difficult, but you can essentially import it into your MetaMask with the Connect hardware wallet feature to basically get the same functionality as another hot wallet. And it doesn't have to be like your cold storage or whatever. Like you can like have like intermediary wallets or lukewarm wallets, use within MetaMask or OpenSea or whatever. Ledger and Trezor are the most popular. I like Ledger because since it's the most popular, it seems to be the most compatible with like dApps and other things. The same reason kind of like people use MetaMask because they get you have a lower chance of basically having compatibility issues with sites and all that. And I've spent like a bajillion hours troubleshooting all the things that can go wrong like with Ledger, and it's usually some UI interaction between MetaMask and the Ledger. So like for me, it's easier to troubleshoot that. So some tips for like buying the Ledger, like always, or any hardware wallet, always make sure it's from the official manufacturer. So don't buy it from eBay or Amazon. That's because it could be potentially compromised or preloaded with malware. So basically it's not, there's no peace of mind basically if you buy that because they could potentially have access to whatever seed phrase you generate on that device. So make sure the packaging is sealed when you receive it. And when you set it up for the first time, it will generate a seed phrase. You can keep regenerating one if you want. Ideally, you should like regenerate it like 5-6 times and make sure it's like actually different. And then when you want to pick one, you only ever write it down physically on paper. And then I recommend people spend like the 50 to 80 bucks to get like a steel or plate version at some point because it basically prevents the potential of it getting destroyed in fire and water. You hear like a ton of like examples of people, who had their Bitcoin, whatever seed phrase in 2014, and then it gets lost or destroyed because they had it on like 1 or 2 paper copies, and then you basically lose access to all your crypto forever. The other big thing is never take a picture or type the seed into any form of keyboard, on phone included. The reason for this is you're basically digitizing the seed and you're turning your cold wallet into basically a hot wallet now. So you're only ever physically writing it down on paper. The only time you will ever need the seed phrase is if you're physically punching it in to like a new ledger to like restore the seed phrase on it. That's like the only time ever. You're never typing in a keyboard, never typing in your phone. The reason for the picture is a ton of people have had like, it gets auto backed up to their iCloud or whatever, and they don't know it. And then someone hacks the iCloud, you're toast, right? So just think of the crypto is basically, think of it being stored on the seed phrase, kind of. The crypto isn't stored on the hardware wallet, but all the wallets generated under the seed phrase. So I can have my ledger destroyed, whatever. As long as I have that seed phrase, that 12 to 24 words, I can, re-import that onto any hardware wallet in the future. I've heard examples of like refugees who've crossed borders and all they had was like the 12 words memorized in their head. And that's how like they transferred their wealth essentially. So that's why it's so powerful in a sense. It's some super text heavy slides, but they're important. So basically what I just went over, the seed phrase is everything. It must be protected at all costs. It gives full control and access to all the wallets generated under that seed. So basically if you lose the seed and the original hardware wallet that the seed was imported into, you basically lost everything, right? This is why it's so important to, properly protect it. There's various levels of storage. Like you can split it into multiple parts. You can add physical distance between it, stored in like unobvious places, at a soup can at the bottom of your freezer, underground somewhere on your property. I know like Snowpro, who is like one of the founders of Art Blocks, who has tens of millions of dollars in NFTs because he was early and has all these punks. He basically has his seed phrase like basically split into like 3 different parts in 3 different states in like banks or something, right? So that's like the most extreme level that you can go to, but that's basically to protect himself, right? If someone ever, finds him in real life and holds him under duress because they know he has tens of millions of dollars in crypto assets, he has plausible deniability of not having access to that seed because he doesn't actually have it on him. For most people, I would say you should have at least 2 to 3 copies of it, and use like, a good pen so it doesn't wash off, and then spend like the 50 to 80 bucks to get like a steel version of it. And the steel version is just like, you're just etching the seed onto a steel plate, basically. When people say, so private keys, when people refer to private keys, it's kind of like the Seedphrase, but it's only wallet specific, generally used to import hot wallets into like new MetaMask accounts, or like into a bidding bot or sniping tool if you want automation, because you're basically giving that software permission to put transactions on that wallet on your behalf. So there's actually the 25th word on Ledger. So addition to the 24 words, Ledger actually has an optional additional security feature. So this passphrase is an advanced feature that adds a 25th word in addition to the seed phrase on top, and that could be a max of 100 characters. So using this passphrase actually causes an entirely different set of addresses to be created under the original seed phrase address. So aside from adding another layer, so the main reason for this is it grants you plausible deniability while under duress. You have to remember this perfectly character for character. It's basically the only final defense against the $5 wrench attack situations where you're threatened physically. What the $5 wrench attack is basically like, you could have all the best crypto security in the world, but if someone, takes a $5 wrench or figures out where you live, and they say, give me your seed phrase, or I'm gonna, cut off your pinky, or put a drill through your hand, or hurt your family members, you're kind of out of luck, right? You're probably gonna concede, right? There's been people, there's tons of stories of people, with Bitcoin wealth who have been captured and tortured for weeks until they basically are forced to comply. So what this does basically is like, let's say you give up, you're like, okay, stop. This is the seed phrase, da 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 da. They get the seed phrase, and you have like 5 ETH on the wallet, but actually, you have the 25th word, which is whatever your word you want. And under that, you actually have like 50 ETH or the rest of your wealth. So and there's no way for them to prove that the 25th word even exists, right? That's the key point. So that's super powerful in itself. Yeah, and I don't know if other hardware wallets have it, but the Ledger does have it. I think it's super interesting. I think this is more applicable, if you're like net worth, 6 figures plus or whatever high net worth is to you. It's basically to protect you in physical threatening situations. So why go through all this friction to set up the hardware wallet? Basically, the hot wallets store the private keys in a location that's connected to the internet. It's actually deceptively easy to be tricked, deceived, or manipulated into revealing or giving these credentials via the internet. So having the cold wallet means that the scammer would physically need to find and take your ledger or seed to have access to those wallets. The seed compromise basically means that all hot wallets and assets are at risk, even those that haven't interacted with the malicious site or contract. So I see people all the time who are like, they think it's in a safe because it's in a hot wallet, that it's in basically a burner wallet, that they're not interacting with any site. But it doesn't matter, because if they have the seed, if their seed gets compromised, or they download malware, whatever, there's a bunch of ways for it to happen. It doesn't matter if that wallet has interacted with anything, because they have control of every wallet that was under that seed phrase. So people thinking that just having an isolated hot wallet is the same as a cold wallet is like an argument I've had a few times with people. So just something to note there. Some common ways people have been hacked in the past via hot wallets. So basically tricking into downloading malware. So job offers via PDFs, beta testing games is a big one. They'll offer you like a mod job or a game. They'll basically mimic a fake game, get you to beta test the game, and you're like, you're downloading the exe and you're basically downloading malware. This is why like launchers like Elixir or a few others are, preferred, because there's kind of like a sense of safety within that. Running macros within Google Sheets, imitations of legitimate sites and services, interacting with malicious contracts, FOMO minting, interacting with the contract from unknown airdrops or received NFTs, inserting or sending keys or seed to customer support, or basically typing it in to anything. Those are just a few that I thought off the top of my head. So some examples of high profile hacks. So for Kevin Rose, he went to go mint a collection, I believe. I don't know what it was. I think it was art blocks, I believe. He basically signed into the site with the gasless signature, thinking he was just logging into the mint site. But because of Seaport or the new OpenSea contract, the way it works is you can create custom orders and then you can accept those with just a signature. So basically what happened was the site, so the site basically abused all the previous permissions he gave for his like squiggles and all his moonbirds and all that stuff. They basically abused the set approval for all he already signed for OpenSea. He was on this random site. He saw this OpenSea pop up like sign into OpenSea. And then basically what he did was he basically sold all his NFTs to the hacker in like a custom order for like basically $1 or free. And this is like a really sneaky one, to be honest. It's gasless. It's the signature. It's the one that feels and, you know, is seen as more safe. So the key takeaway would be signatures can also be abused if they take advantage of previous approvals. And the big one is like, don't sign OpenSea approvals on sites other than OpenSea. And don't interact with contracts or websites with a Grail or main vault wallet. Just send it to an intermediary wallet beforehand and use that to interact with whatever site you interact with. That's basically how that could have been prevented. So NFT God, basically, what he did is he basically imported his account into MetaMask and typed in his seed phrase. So when you do the import account option, that's for basically like importing hot wallets. The connect hardware wallet option, it will bring you to a screen. It will say like plug in the ledger and then the wallets will show up. The import account, you're basically typing in the seed phrase to do it. Turned his cold wallet into a hot wallet by doing that without knowing it, I guess. And to his defense, like the UI on MetaMask doesn't warn you or really tell you. But like, to be honest, he kind of should have known better. So he tried to download OBS, which is just like, you know, a normal recording software. ODS, which was promoted as malware at the top of Google. And it basically drained all his hot wallets. And since this cold wallet was a hot wallet, it drained everything he had. And then the key takeaway, never digitize the seed in any way, typing any form of a keyboard, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so that's how that would have been prevented, basically.